Hello, everybody. Today is Drake Appreciation Day, as always. Coming at you with another review, getting right into it. We have Drake's third studio album, Nothing Was the Same. Now, as we all know, Drake, Toronto, Canadian rapper, who first came on the scene with his mixtape projects where, I thought, I always believed that Drake's mixtapes were always great. Album-wise, when it came to Thank Me Later, that was more of a project that just came and went. While Take Care, although, was Drake's best album, in my opinion, it still wasn't, to many other people, not up to par with his mixtape work. So when I heard about Nothing Was the Same, Drake announced the album was coming. The first time I've heard a single was the Started From the Bottom joint, which I really liked. I thought was a pretty dope song. I did notice that there has been a major lyrical digression from Drake listening to this track. But so far, the way he delivered the rhyme, the way he rapped it, the way the beat came in, I was like, this is actually pretty cool. I like it. I'm enjoying this. The hook was very infectious and even catchy at one point. Then you hear tracks like 5 a.m. In Toronto, arguably Drake's best track, period. Best, individual. There's a video for it and everything. He took shots at, a lot of people said Chris Brown, but Weeknd caught a lot of strays from that track. Ludacris got hit with something, DMX, Pusha T, which is why Pusha T, still responds to Drake whenever he says something during that time of their lyrical sparring. I mean, you name it. He took some shots at people, but that track obviously was not on this album. But at the time, listening to that, Started From the Bottom, Girls Love Beyonce, which was also not on the album, really had me going for another Drake project. Then he came out with some singles like Wu-Tang Forever, a track that people thought was disrespectful, and I'm just like, well, let me listen to it. And quite frankly, I actually enjoyed that track. You had Pound Cake and the All Me single, which was a nice radio hit. But for the most part, the real question was, as I said in this last review, where Drake said on his last album of Take Care, last track on Take Care, his junior and senior will only get meaner. The question is, with this being his third album and his quote-unquote junior, will this be, has this really lived up to the expectations that Drake has said? And in my opinion, this was a pretty good album. There's no real complaints about this. When you really think about it, this actually was a dope-ass project. Top to bottom, where you had the production, you have a grand opener like Tuscan Leather, you have Drake's, first 4 tracks where it's all just hard-hitting bass, lyrics, he's just rapping, he's going in. But then, you get to the middle of the album where, like, tracks like Own It and From Time and Hold On, Worst Behavior doesn't necessarily have the slower vibe to it, but in a way, that being few and far between, the most part is, just the middle of the track has a bit of a slow vibe, a just calming vibe, where Drake just has this more brag swag rap, but he doesn't really, get too energetic towards it, and then it just picks right back up with language. 305 to my city, too much, and pound cake, you know. And so you have a nice grand opener, and you have a nice grand closing, and then you have middle of the album where it's just like, meh. But for the most part, this is actually pretty good when you think of the production, you know, from Tusk and Leather, where each beat switches as Drake just raps from perspective. One, he's getting in there. One, he's in the middle of it. And another, he's on top. You know, furthest thing where he's just singing a little. He's more rap singing about, you know, plotting and scheming. And then that last verse where the beat just changes and Drake's just going in, and started from the bottom, where Drake is just really just bragging about where he's at in his position of hip hop. And then you have Wu-Tang Forever, which a lot of people didn't realize was another shot at Chris Brown, but a lot of people don't even notice that. And talk about Rihanna, which was weird, but, you know, I wouldn't say that people, certain people from Wu-Tang was just like, oh, I wouldn't name this album this. RZA and some other people actually did like it, and then they kind of just went back on their words, which is ironic. But, you know, you have Own It, where the production's a little more softer and smoother, with a little bit of, you know, just Drake just really doing what he usually does, and that's do his rap song stuff. And Worst Behavior, where Drake is like more braggy and, you know, off his chest, and just like, really is this point, is like, man, you never loved me, so while I'm at the top of my career, I'm going to act out in the worst way. And obviously Drake from time is talking about his past relationships, and this is the first time I've heard of Jhené Aiko in the first place on a track, which, you know, in my opinion, I kind of thought Jhené Aiko's vocals were passable, in my opinion, but I didn't hate the track. You know, then, you know, you have tracks like Hold On, Going Home, which is another, you know, love ballad. Connect, which was another song about women, as always. But then you have The Language, where Drake is on his bragging stuff. 305 to My City, which is like really, it's ironic because, you know, 305 to My City, you know, from Miami to Toronto, really, this sounds more like a Houston track. You know, this sounds more like the beat, the way it's slow. It really sounds more like a Houston track, in my opinion. And Too Much, which is more somber and reminiscent in a way, talking about his family. And then the track ends with Pound Cake, which then transitions to Paris Morton Music 2, which that is the second part of that track is my favorite of this album, period. The way the beat just Drake just reminiscing, you know, and that's where you have lyrics of this. You have lyrics of nostalgia, reminiscing, you know, a couple of somber moments, you know. But for the most part, you know, we all looked at the first two albums of Thank Me Later and Take Care as, you know, two albums of Drake just crying about women. And this album, really, this is more Drake just sitting back and just looking back. It has, you know, nothing to really do about crying about unrequited love anymore. Almost as if Drake is kind of at a moment where it's like, oh well. Even Paris Morton Music 1 was talking about, oh man, it's too late. You know, I should have came back. I could have came back. But now Paris Morton Music is like, you know, it's really nice where I'm at. You know, I talked to her for a while. She's a mom. You know what I mean? If she ever needs a place to stay, she's here. But I don't think she's really worried about it. So it's all cool. And then you have the bonus tracks like Come Through, All Me, and The Motion, where, you know, once again, you know, Come Through, talks about women. On Me, a brag rap track with Chains and Big Sean. And, let's get into it. You know what I mean? 2 Chainz obviously entertains me like I said he always does. And Big Sean, in my opinion, had the best verse of this track. The only thing I didn't like is when Big Sean kind of just, hopped from flow to flow, but into a point where he was getting off beat. But it worked for him, in my opinion. I actually thought Big Sean had the best verse on there, to the point where Drake had to redo this track at the end of the song, which is on the single version. Yes, he did that. And the Motion, where just ends on a weird note, in my opinion. I don't even want to get into that. But the production, for the most part, is very airy. It's very spaced apart. Like the album cover, it's like when you listen to it, it's like you're in the sky. With the exception of Hold On, We're Going Home. For some strange reason, I heard this track and it felt like I was underwater. I don't know why, but it just did. But everything else, was like I was in the air. And we gotta shout out the producers. 40, Jake 1, Detail, DJ Dahi, we had Jordan, 1985, Hudson, Mohawk, Vinyls, Boy Wonder, Sampha, and Zombie on the track, who did Started From the Bottom. It's the first time we've heard Zombie do a track. And we would later find out from Joe Budden that, it was he was also supposed to be on the track, and we haven't heard him since, but this is only coming from Joe Budden's mouth. We don't know really what happened. But hey, it is what it is. We have Capadonna, which is ironic, who does vocals for Drake's album. Party Next Door, who did a couple of background features. Baka, Murder on the Beat, because it's not nice. And quite a few others on there. But for the most part, the sound overall is really the best quality of this album. And if we are taking the 3 bonus tracks I just mentioned and we're just ending the track with Pound Cake, it ends real good. This album, like when you look at Thank Me Later, Drake comes in as, he comes in hip hop. He's at the top of his game, the top of where he's at. This is him just coming in. Take Care is Drake really adjusting to where he is, seeing the ups and downs of where he's at in his status. And Nothing Was the Same as Drake just embracing it more and just, using it to take it further than where he is at the moment. And I think this is what makes this album really good. Now, if we can talk about the cons of this album, the ultimate cons of this album. Now, a lot of people felt that Drake has digressed from Thank Me Later lyrically and Take Care even more lyrically. In my opinion, listening to those albums, there has been some slight digressions as each album was going down, as each album was coming lyrically, but I always felt like Drake was still using punchlines and this and that. As this album comes in, lyrically, with the exceptions of few songs like Tuscan Leather and Worst Behavior, although there was more of a Mace reference, but regardless, Tuscan Leather, Pound Cake, All Me, Even, and Furthest Thing, for the most part of this album, Drake literally and lyrically has taken a sharp left. And Drake has been open about this on Elliot's Crown interview. Drake feels, in his opinion, when he makes his album, that if he wanted to rap, he can, and there are songs where he does. But for the most part, lyrically in this album, Drake doesn't use too many punchlines or metaphors or any lyrical techniques in his style. Most of it's very straightforward, almost too straightforward. And, it's actually shows from then on there for the rest of his career. You see that, where Drake doesn't use too many and he rarely flows until there are tracks where he flows. But, this is where Drake actually makes up with from lack of lyricism into songwriting, because when it comes to songwriting, in my opinion, you have to do more than just write lyrics. And if sacrificing lyrics means making catchy songs or songs people could relate to, then so be it. And I felt like, in my opinion, listening to this album, and you listen to the other two, even though Take Care is my favorite, you kind of see that Drake using lyricism at many points actually hold him back a lot. To where I say, certain songs are just so forgettable because they're so bar heavy that once Drake has kind of just cut that off, it just makes it much more easier to enjoy. And if anything, it makes the songs last longer, which I believe this album did, in my opinion. He made some of these songs, at least a majority of these songs individually, last longer. He made them catchy, makes people relate to them, that he rarely did in the other album. And I believe you see more of Drake's actual character come out as opposed to when you saw him in the other two albums. Because Drake was so focused on writing bar-heavy rhymes. To many people he forgot that's what took him to the dance. But from here on there, I can honestly say that from Take Care on, Drake has made a lot of catchy music. He's made a lot of memorable lines. Aside from the cringy ones, but that's besides the point. Memorable lines. You could talk about the production being too sparse and too airy, but that's really a minor for me. This is what this album's sound was going to be, and I think for the majority of the parts, he does a good job. Yeah, there are some songs he probably could have took off, like Hold On, We're Going Home. Although I liked it, didn't necessarily need it. 305 to my... No, I wouldn't say 305 to my city, but definitely Own It. And From Time, in my opinion, and even Connect. But for the most part, those were just songs I just axed because those seem like throwaways, in my opinion. Maybe there are some throwaways we don't even know about. And why is Jodeci a throwaway? I don't know. But you could have put that track with him and J. Cole on this album and replaced fucking Connect, and you would have had a doper sound. But that's just me. For the most part, with that being said, this is a pretty cool album to listen to, in my opinion. And with that being said, I would give this album actually a 7 out of 10. I was thinking about 8 out of 10, but I felt like the only reason that kept it from getting that rating wasn't necessarily the lack of lyrical digression, but just the fact that this has been a problem for Drake. His albums just come and go, and Drake's mixtapes are really the ones with staying power. Although Take Care has staying power, that's the only album, in my opinion, that has staying power. Thank Me Later and this one, not so much. With that being said, this is Shake Master J. Like I said, the school semester is almost over, so I will make sure I will give you the best content afterwards. I hope you guys are having fun on this lovely spring, as this is being recorded, of course, spring break or whatnot. And if you have any requests, any music you want to give me, my email, my Facebook, my Twitter, my IG will be in the description. hit me up. Let me know what you want to hear. Send me some music. If you want me to review it, let me know, and you know what I'm going to do. This is Jhammaster J, signing off with a crotch grab. Peace.